Alrighty. Well, I'm Nathan. I'm the founder of the New England Objectivist Society and the most recent addition to the Alumni for Liberty Board. So working with college groups like Students for Liberty and Young Americans for Liberty to make sure they stay active once they graduate. And I'm here to talk to you today about how to message liberty on campus. And a little bit more specifically, how to make yourselves worth talking to, how to make your organization more worth joining, and how to make your cause worth fighting for. And the reason that that's so important to me is that I used to be really terrible at it. The way I know I was terrible at it is that I started out tabling for hours on end. Well, you already got this. And I looked something like this guy. I'll be behind my table. Oh, it's kind of dim, isn't it? Well, we have a college Republican here. This is not in any way directed towards college Republicans. I actually... Sure, that's a great idea. Yeah. Oh, that's a lot better. So I used to do this. I would sit behind a table for hours on end and cross my arms and stare out into the distance and wonder why no one would come to my table. And then I would do that the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Turns out it was because I wasn't engaging them or convincing them that what I was doing was in their interest, besides just my own interest. The way I knew I was turning around, I'll tell you about it in a second. I just wanted to show you that even Obama disapproves of that failed method of tabling, and Republicans apparently. So I started to make myself more approachable, and I knew that was working. Hold on a sec. Because I went to the premiere of Atlas Shrugged Part 2 in Boston, and I was giving out books with their permission, of course. And I came to a bench with 3 middle school girls on it and asked them, would you like a free copy of Atlas Shrugged? The first one said, I don't read. The second one didn't say anything. And the third one said, well, what's that about? And before I answered, before I gave them my usual answer, I thought for a sec and realized they don't want to hear about politics. They don't want to be scared. They don't want me to tell them that things are going down the drain and that they have to challenge fascist encroachment or anything. I realized then that it was not a successful message. So instead I said, well, this is a book about people like you who want to make the most out of their lives and want a freer world to live in. Something to that effect. And you know what the first girl said, who had just told me that she doesn't read? She said, I can actually relate with that. Can I grab a copy? And that was awesome. That was one of the proudest moments of my life, because the girl who had told me she doesn't read asked me for a copy of an 1,100-page book and left the theater with a genuine interest in reading it. So, can anyone identify in a nutshell what I did differently there?
You made it about them.
I made it about them.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I made it about them.
People who are not necessarily into this stuff that's for the first time, they don't want to be scared away. So if you
Exactly.
doom and gloom, they're gonna be like, oh, well, I don't want to deal with that. You know. So
Exactly.
if you change it to a positive message, they'll be more interested.
You're exactly right. That's what this is all about, is being able to talk to people who are not already part of our movement. At least 3 people in this room were at the International Students for Liberty conference last week. And in that case, we're in an environment of like-minded people. We don't have to worry about growing the choir. We're preaching to the choir, but just making the choir better at knowing libertarian principles. But in most cases, you don't have that luxury. You're in a place where people don't know what you're talking about, and you need to be able to market to them in such a way that they care, and they need to care. It's important stuff. So the first step is to make ourselves more approachable, and to do that, we need to get out from behind the table if you're tabling, or if you're in a meeting. It depends on your context, but let's say you're tabling. You need to get out from behind the table Get out of the trenches, I like to say, and onto the front lines. Don't cross your arms because it's closed. It's closed-minded. No one likes to see that. Don't look sad and lonely because then you'll keep being sad and lonely. Look happy and optimistic. Smile at people. Make eye contact as they're passing by. Like pretend that you're all people walking through the campus center at UMass Amherst. I'm making very brief eye contact with all of you to see if there's anything there, to see if there's just some interest from another human being in a fellow human being and hearing what they have to say. And then from there, I ask, would you like? Not, hey, I have a book, agree with me. Would you like to read a copy of Atlas Shrugged? Would you like to sign our petition to legalize marijuana? Would you like to learn about individual rights? Whatever. Would you like? Is it in your interest to do it? And I think it is. I'm going to convince you that it is now. So that's key. By the way, this picture of people tabling correctly is from Young Americans for Liberty. I want to make sure I give them credit. I'm not part of their organization, really, but they have a lot of good stuff, so you should check them out. The next step is to evaporate the ice. Who's broken the ice before? Come on, simple question. Who's been in a room before and someone will say, all right, guys, we're going to do introductions. This is a nice little icebreaker. So tell us your name and your favorite color. Awesome.
We used to do that on our work. Favorite cereal, favorite car, favorite cartoon. I learned nothing about that.
Exactly. Neil, what's your second least favorite color?
Mauve.
Mauve? Okay. You know how much more I like you now? 0%. I don't care that you like mauve or that you second dislike mauve. And that's how one of my RAs started our icebreaker in a dorm at UMass a year ago. And I left that room knowing everyone 0% better because the questions were shallow and not value-based. So we're evaporating the ice, not just breaking or melting it. This is actually melted ice, and we want to go a step further. By identifying and building on shared values, and it's very simple to do that. All you need to do is say, I'll go with someone I don't know yet. You in the front, what's your name? Christoph. Christoph, what do you study?
Political science.
Oh, cool. I actually study political science. What do you want to do with that?
Well, I'm more into business and entrepreneurship.
Okay. So based on what Christoph just said, we can I'll talk about this more later. We can tailor our message more towards Christoph than to everyone else in the world besides Christoph. So we want to know their name so we can use their name in conversation. Very simple principle of communication with other humans. And then we can say something like, Christoph, since you want to go into business, I think that you should read this in particular. So when we close, when we're sending someone off on their way to get to their class that they're in a rush to, or we're closing a meeting or whatever, and we have all this free stuff on the table, you want to show them that your free stuff matters. Who's a leader of a student group here? Anyone else? Who's been a leader, maybe? Okay. Did you ever have like nonprofits send you free things to distribute? All the time. So did I. And so does every other group tabling where you're tabling. So do the sororities and the fraternities and the college Republicans and the fundraisers for people in Haiti and the political science department and the econ department looking for fellow Marxists if you're at UMass. Things like that. Everyone has free stuff. No one cares if you also have free stuff unless you can show them that your free stuff matters. So Christoph, I happen to have a pamphlet, not with me, but I have a pamphlet that I used to give out at UMass called How Money Can Buy Happiness. And I'm going to recommend that to you because you sound like a really ambitious guy and I admire what you're doing. So I'm going to give you this and then I'm going to send you a personal message after. And I'm going to say, Christoph, thank you for coming to our table. I really liked what you had to say about such and such. I'm looking forward to seeing you at our meeting. I'd really like to have your input, something like that. You can play with it. You don't have to quote me verbatim. Point is, be personable and read Dale Carnegie, because he can help you with that. So now we've made ourselves worth talking to, or a little bit more worth talking to. we want to make our organization worth joining. And I have some, this is partly influenced by some of my readings from Ayn Rand, because she said that relationships, organizations, however you want to term it, are exchanges of values, all of them. Romantic, friendly, business, social, whatever. Any relationship you have with another human being is an exchange of values, and you need to be aware of what values you're exchanging. So we apply the same principles, and I'll move on to these, but we apply the same principles of establishing rapport, of getting to know them in terms of their values, of appealing to them in terms of their values. And in the case of an organization, what organizations do we have here? Name organizations that you're a part of, or leading, or have led.
Libertarian Party of New Hampshire.
Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Neil?
Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, New Hampshire Objectivists.
Second Amendment Systems Together chapter.
Okay. Anyone else? Students for Liberty?
Campaign for Liberty, Middlesex County Coordinator, Massachusetts.
I didn't know that that was your title. Do I know you?
I think we met on a
No, I mean, I thought I knew you better. Okay. Well, again, I'm on the Alumni for Liberty board. I found the New England Objectivist Society. All of these organizations are sums of individuals that share certain values. And let's face it, none of us are old enough to know everything inside and out, the leaders of student organizations. So we want to be in an environment where we're learning together and treating people as friends, not as converts, and acting as diplomats rather than as inquisitors. We don't want to cast people out if they don't agree with us 100%. This is coming from an objectivist. You may not have heard that from an objectivist before. It's kind of scary, right? But it's true. Even objectivists are open-minded enough to know that most fellow human beings are semi-decent and want to make more out of their lives and want to learn more. And maybe we can influence them to want that more. So long-term, we want quality over quantity. We want quality of friendships. We want to treat people as friends, as human beings, not as converts, not as numbers on our list. And you can come up with other ways, other illusions for this, but I think you get the idea that we're treating people as what they are. Remembering, of course, that relationships and organizations are exchanges of values. So now that we've made our organizations more worth joining, or I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions on that part, on how to make our organizations worth joining? Okay. We want to make our cause worth fighting for. And our cause, by the way, let's call it the Liberty Movement, not even strictly libertarian. The Liberty Movement is advanced by a lot of different organizations: New Hampshire Objectivist Society, New England Objectivist Society, Alumni for Liberty, Students for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, Institute for Humane Studies, et cetera. You can go through the whole alphabet soup. There are tons of organizations that are advancing liberty, but they're all more or less part of the same cause. And our messaging is going to be different based on what organization we're from and what school we're at. But again, as you pointed out, we're going to be talking to people that don't know what we're talking about. We're going to be talking to newcomers. And we want to get them on board with our movement, with our ideals. And you saw the college Republican who was doing that the wrong way. So we're going to talk about how to do it a better way. And this is by no means the only way you can do it, but I like to use what I call the YOLO speech, or YOLO spiel. Everyone's heard YOLO probably. What does that, someone in college, I'm not in college anymore actually. Who's still in college? You're still in college. You've heard of YOLO before, right? What does it mean? Okay, but what does that mean? Why do people say it?
I didn't hear.
You only live once. Just do it, okay. More deeply than that. Why should we just do it?
Because we only live once, so we want to
Yeah.
have a chance to take action.
Exactly, we only live once, so we only have one chance to take action to make the most out of our lives. Now, most people think of YOLO as license to get into a drunken stupor on Friday nights, but it's a lot more than that, in principle. I just think that our rappers and hip-hop artists got it wrong. What it really means to me, and what I think it will mean to you after this, is we only have one opportunity to make the most out of our lives, which is why we should be dedicated to making the most out of our lives, not just acting on whims. So I make this kind of spiel, the one that's in bold and italics, to prove to people that they agree. I'm not asking them if they agree. I'm not even trying to get them to agree. I'm proving to them that they agree. Because everyone at some level wants to make more out of their lives. Or maybe that's an unfair assumption. Does someone in here not want to make more out of their lives? Okay, I was right. Cool. Does anyone in here not want to be happy? Okay. Do you think there's anyone, anywhere ever, that doesn't want to make more out of their lives and be happy? Well, there are, but they're not in their right mind, and there are very few of them, relatively. So we're appealing to the very human desire to pursue our self-interest and the human need to think in order to be able to pursue our self-interest, and the human need for freedom to act on our self-interest, to act on our judgment. So I'll say something like, someone else's, well, I know Brandon. You already know this, Brandon, but I'll just say, Brandon, you only live once, right? And you should be able to make the most out of your life. You should be able to go be the Middlesex coordinator for Campaign for Liberty or whatever else it is that you do. I'm not sure I want to know all the things you do. But your life belongs to you, not other people. So no one, not your parents or guardians, not your church if you go to one, your professors, your government should be able to tell you what to do with it. And if you're talking to someone who cares more about politics, you can say something like, you only live once, your life belongs to you. You should be able to decide who you marry, what you smoke, how much of your paycheck you keep, etc. You can tailor it toward your audience, but the principle we want to communicate that is much more important than be a member of YAL, SFL, or LP is you own your own life. If we get away from that, then we're doomed, and we can just leave Liberty Forum and everything else and just go home if we're not able to communicate that people's lives belong to them. I was trying to find a funny picture of Ayn Rand kind of just sneaking up. That's the best I could do, I'm sorry. But she firmly believed in that, and that's the main thing that she inspired me to do, is to make more out of my own life and to communicate that to other people. If there's one thing that we're going to communicate as libertarians, objectivists, whatever, it's that people own their own lives. And you can find other ways to do that, of course. So basically, what we're doing is performing Inception. Has anyone not seen Inception? Okay, real briefly, it's a sci-fi movie about getting inside people's dreams and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a really interesting concept that you can get inside people's dreams and plant ideas there so that in their waking life, they act on those ideas, they bring them to fruition. So basically what we're doing is performing Inception by planting and cultivating this idea, which in most cases is already there. We're not doing anything deceptive here. We're helping them. We're planting, and cultivating the idea that that it's their one life to make the most out of, that they have to work to get where they want in life, that they have to think to be able to do that effectively. And in terms of our libertarian context, we're planting and cultivating the idea that a free society is the only society in which they can thrive. Now, don't you think that that's going to appeal to way more people than starting a conversation with, well, what's your group? Oh, we're trying to abolish the Department of Education, income taxes, the FDA, the FCC, and everything else. That's what a lot of people start with. And a couple people said how we don't want to scare people. Guess what? That scares people. And I used to say stuff like that at a public school. We want to abolish the Department of Education, which I agree with, actually. But that's besides the point. That's going to scare the heck out of people that have been brainwashed and duped and lied to and manipulated for their whole lives by the whole culture and need help and don't know that there's an alternative out there. No one has ever told them that their lives belong to them. So don't treat them as bad people. Treat them as ignorant and possibly incompetent.
Without letting them know it.
Yes, but I don't treat people as incompetence. I treat people as ignorant because I've been ignorant. I'm still ignorant about a lot of things. I'm not omnipotent or other things. I am omnibenevolent. I'm not omnipotent though, and I'm not infallible, so I get things wrong, but the point is to get people to think about this very basic idea without scaring them and show them that it's something that we can all value as a whole, as libertarians, but also outside the liberty movement. And by doing that, we inspire them and can empower them to live their own lives, to take control, to understand the world around them because there are answers out there. It's just hard to find them. And to empower them to act on the knowledge that they gain and make a difference. All because we started by making ourselves worth talking to and making our organizations worth joining by being inclusive and open-minded. And now we're making our cause worth fighting for by proving to people that it's their cause too. And if they don't support that cause, if they don't agree with you, then yes, they are bad people. But you have to be delicate. I'm being less delicate here because we're all of like minds, I think. But I've learned how to message. And before I close and move on to questions and surveys and stuff, I'm just going to say you should read these 2 books, and they're going to be on this list of resources and free things. I don't have free copies of those books, actually, but you should read them, and they will help you learn how to communicate with humans. They'll also help you learn how to think, especially philosophy who needs it. That tells you about the value of philosophy in our lives and how we can take control of our own minds. How in Friends and Influence People will start you on a course to communicate more effectively, which is something I'm still learning. I'm not a professional at it. I'm learning. And I'll mention something free after. But I just want to make a couple more points that, by the way, Brandon is in this picture. Yay. We got 17 people from around New England and Quebec somehow. Maine, Quebec, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut to get on this rickety retired airport shuttle and to drive for 15 hours in the middle of a snowstorm down to DC for the International Students for Liberty Conference. And we would not have been able to do that if these people were not passionate but also able to communicate. All these people are kind, outgoing, open-minded individuals who treat other people as equals, or at least as potential equals, and welcome them with open arms as people who are going to learn with us. And it's because of that that we were able to travel together and to make this trip a success in the middle of what was supposed to be the apocalypse, apparently. We made it, sort of, barely. But we made it. And because of groups like that, we have bigger groups like this. This was the Boston Regional Conference for Students for Liberty, at which, by the way, I was a panelist on the student activism panel. I don't have a picture from the international conference yet, but it would be much bigger. My point is, all of these people share these traits that I've been talking about to some extent or another. And to the degree that they become conscious of it and take control of it and make a concerted effort to become better at communicating and messaging, we're going to keep succeeding and keep growing our numbers and building our networks and relationships. But to the extent that we remain unconscious of it and treat it as a lesser issue We're just going to have numbers and be able to say, well, look how many people we have on our mailing list. And then all you're going to have is 20 people who sit around in a room looking at each other, agreeing that they don't like drones. What good is that? Wouldn't you rather have 3 people that are really passionate and willing to take the dedication to do what we did? Or to do what they did? They had to move the conference in Boston the day of because Suffolk canceled it for the Red Sox parade. And they didn't complain, they just did it. And the conference went on, just as it did in DC this weekend with the snow. Liberty doesn't stop for snow or for the Red Sox. So we're all in it together, my friends. And like I said, we need to make a concerted effort so that this value of being one movement out of many different movements, just as the United States is one entity that is supposed to respect individual rights, but is comprised of smaller states that are supposed to respect individual rights. This is the attitude we need to have. And if we have that attitude, then we'll keep winning. And I'll see you in the history books. To liberty. So I have some surveys that I passed around. Did everyone get them? How much time do we have? Oh, wonderful. I finished exactly on time. So yes, if you could fill those out, that would be awesome. And where are the other ones? I need to remind myself what's on them. At the end, I ask a kind of a strange question. I ask, if you would like a free copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People, what do you stand to gain? And what do I stand to gain from giving you one? The deal there is I'm going to give someone a free copy of that. I don't have it with me. I will mail it. I can't afford to send one to everyone. I'm sorry. I just graduated. It can't be done. But if you can prove to me that you got something at all out of what I just said, and if you can also offer useful feedback, and if you can give me a better answer than everyone else, I'm not going to tell you today. I'm not going to make anyone look bad here. But I want a really good answer. Why do you deserve it? What are you going to get out of it? And why should I spend money on you who I may not have ever met? I'm not trying to be mean. It's all about mutual exchange and mutual benefit. So check those out. And when you're done with those, I'll tell you about free things that I have. But
When will you be taking questions? You said something about that.
now, actually, while we're doing the surveys, I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. This is my first time speaking in this kind of venue. It's fun. I'm just getting used to it, though.
Well, my question is this, thank you. Basically, there are a lot of organizations in any venue, whether it's a college campus or the Free State here in New Hampshire, where people can choose to work for liberty. How would you advise students on a campus or anybody to decide which venue they would select? So like if you have the objectivist groups, you have the Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty,
Sure.
et cetera. Thank you.
That's an excellent question. So it, of course, depends on your context. If you're still in college and your concern, it also depends what you want to accomplish as a group. Different groups serve different purposes in the short term, but they serve the same purpose in the long term. So Young Americans for Liberty is more geared towards activism and political training. They call themselves, at least on their website, they call themselves Libertarian Republicans or Liberty Republicans. So they're all about changing the structure of the establishment, changing the makeup of the Republican Party at the federal and state level, raising money for candidates through Liberty PAC, and mobilizing students to get involved in those kinds of campaigns, but also mobilizing them on their own campuses. Whereas Students for Liberty, they're more geared towards philosophical exchange. They're kind of midway between just talking about philosophy and what YAL does, which is political activism. They do a lot of work together. So if that's what you're looking for, getting involved on campus, I'd go with one of those two organizations or both. And this is great. You should hear this if you're a student right now still and you're thinking of starting a group or improving your group, because they work together. Now, if you're not in school, there are a lot of ways to get involved. And you don't have to limit yourself to one organization. Alumni for Liberty, I just joined the board for Alumni for Liberty. We're starting a chapter in Boston and later on in Manchester/Nashua. Is all about keeping people involved in the movement in kind of a mentor capacity. So they help out those who are still students, and they have their social events. So, you know, it really depends on how much time you have and what you want to get out of it. If you just want to go to a happy hour once a month, then Alumni for Liberty or Liberty on the Rocks are great. If you want to take over the Republican Party, then maybe you want to go with YAL. If you want to learn about Hayek, SFL is probably a good way to go. If you want to learn about objectivism, there are a couple of think tanks that support objectivist groups, and I actually distribute literature to those who are interested in starting them. So, you know, what are you trying to get out of the Liberty movement? What are you trying to contribute? That's the question you want to ask. And then look at their mission statements and see which ones satisfy that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
Neil?
Hey, thank you for your talk. I was wondering apart from one-on-one interactions, what have been the most successful ways of garnering media attention and thereby spreading the message of your student group? What kind of interesting tactics have you used on campus to gain a larger voice?
Being relentless. So a lot of people underrate Facebook. Sure, just having a Facebook group is slacktivism. It doesn't accomplish anything. But if you are really engaged and you get all of your members to do like blasts, where you have everyone invite everyone that they know, and you send personal invitations to the people who you actually think care, and you send personal invitations to the people you just met at tabling, if you're not face-to-face, you use email to remind them that you know they exist. That's always a nice thing to do. In terms of media attention, I managed to get into my school's newspaper a few times because I showed them that we're not a fringe group, that we are entirely relevant, and that what we're doing is novel. And I basically talked them into interviewing me. In a couple cases, they came to interview me, or they asked me for something, or I would run into a reporter at an event, like the USA Today was at the Steve Forbes talk at UMass. I met Steve Forbes, I talked to the USA Today, et cetera. I've talked to like a bunch of newspapers accidentally, and I've gone out of my way for a couple. But that's a key thing, is being willing to put yourself out there and not wait around and wonder why no one is noticing you. Well, they're not noticing you maybe because you're not being noticeable. I'm not saying that about you. I'm saying that about people in general, that a lot of people are just afraid to take that step and go to their campus, to their editor at their campus newspaper and say, this is something new and untried, and and the campus community should hear about it in the interest of being intellectually pluralistic, which UMass is bad at, by the way. Did that answer your question? Basically being relentless and being forward. You had a question, I'm sorry.
I find it really interesting that you combine Ayn Rand and Dale Carnegie. I've read Carnegie's book and recently some works of Ayn Rand as well. And I just read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And
Wonderful.
The figure of Robert Rowe, for me, it seems like he's more like the anti-Carnegie. Because his character traits are really admirable, but how he seems for me in this book, he has not really incorporated the principles of Dale Carnegie. How do you think about that? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, You're not wrong. There are some areas where Carnegie should be taken with a grain of salt, because he'll say something like, don't try to win an argument. Don't ever argue. Give credit to everyone but yourself. So when I talk about this book, I should have said earlier on, you really need to take it with a grain of salt. The main value of it is showing people that you value them, and that's something that Ayn Rand very much agreed with. If you read the Virtue of Selfishness, it talks about the value of relationships and how you exchange values. And if you read this book called The Selfish Path to Romance by Helen Kenner, she's an objectivist psychologist, she also talks about that, and not just in the context of romance. She talks about it in every social context, that people want to be visible for their values. And Dale Carnegie, so Helen Kenner, Ayn Rand, they identify that that is true, that people want to be recognized for their values. Dale Carnegie shows you how to do it. And you know what? He was just a really, really friendly guy. And he showed people that they were potent to take control of their own lives. And that communication, like everything, is a skill that we can master. We're not born with skills. We're not born good communicators or orators or libertarians. We're born with a mind that has that capacity. And Dale Carnegie shows us how to do it. So that's the value of Carnegie, is empowering people to be better communicators. Is that it? Anyone else? All right. Did everyone get one of these survey thingies? Okay. Before you leave, actually I can start handing them out because we still have about 5 minutes. I have these flyers. I'll do one thing at a time, with a bunch of resources that you should look at, like mailing lists, resources for free things from various pro-liberty organizations. And again, you don't have to be allied to just one. I'm involved with YAL, SFL, AFL, etc. So check these out. I think you'll like some of the resources that I offer here. Actually,
Come watch my talk, 6:15 today, from collectivist to activist, how to get out of the echo chamber, room A.
I thought that was yesterday at Ignite.
That's today. Last night was the Ignite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you like my
Actually, if you could just pass it around.
How was it tonight? You couldn't come to
Yeah.
not just yours.
Students for Liberty stickers. Who's a student who likes liberty?
Mine has some last.
Yeah, I was disappointed that that was on Thursday.
How to win friends and influence people. It's on the bottom of that sheet, actually.
No, not that one. It's just at my question, this objectivist.
Philosophy Who Needs It? Virtue of Selfishness. Yeah, Virtue of Selfishness and Selfish Path to Romance. That. Selfish Path to Romance. Yep. It's true.
Nathan?
Yes.
The reason I asked the question, and maybe slightly different on a campus, when I first moved to New Hampshire upon graduating from UMass class of '81,
Pass these
the
around.
LPNH was really the only game in town. I mean, Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers hadn't really even started yet. Nowadays, there's the Free State Project, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, CNHT, LPNH, and plus all the young and middle-aged and older people freedom organizations. And
Sure.
it would be extremely easy to spread oneself too thin. I have to constantly pick my battles because, I mean, again, we're in a friendly audience when it comes to distrusting the government, but they give us so many targets.
Yes,
The government does.
that's
So
true.
where does one pick? Mosquito in a nudist colony comes to mind as an analogy. And that's been my battle even after 55 years on this earth.
Well, I would say,
Go ahead.
to attempt to answer that, I would say you should pick partly based on the criteria that I just mentioned. You don't want to be part of an organization that doesn't know how to communicate. You don't want to be part of an organization that comprises people who are closed-minded and always walking around with a sad look on their face, crossing their arms, and wondering why no one cares about the liberty movement. You want to join an organization or support an organization like Students for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, that are good at those things and that are really advancing the cause and are bringing it everywhere. Students for Liberty has 1,100 member organizations worldwide. It took them 5 years to do that. 5 years, that's not a lot. And they did that because they're good at communicating, whereas other organizations have had decades on them and they still haven't gotten it all together. What does that say about them? Does it say that people don't care, or does it say that there's something wrong with them and how they're marketing themselves? I think it's the latter. All right, looks like other people are filing in. If anyone has other questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, whatever, I have my card here. I'll be right outside there. If you missed the list of resources, I still have a bunch. So, yeah. If you want to just hand it down, yeah, just hand your stuff, just hand your surveys down if you could. That would be great. And hand them over to Brandon or the projector. You can give them to the projector.